You know, when the history books get written about humanity's first contact with an alien species, they probably won't mention that it happened at a food truck called Jimmy's Inferno on a Tuesday afternoon in downtown Phoenix. They definitely won't mention that the alien in question was 8 feet tall, covered in what looked like angry reptile scales, and had more teeth than a dental convention. But hey, that's exactly what happened. Commander Razak of the Galactic Predator Council had been hunting across 17 star systems for 3 decades. His ship's trophy room was filled with the skulls of the fiercest creatures the galaxy had to offer. The bone crushers of Andromeda, child's play. The acid spitters of Proxima, Tuesday workout. This particular Tuesday, Razak had set his sights on a little blue planet that his scouts reported was populated by soft pink creatures who, apparently, killed each other over pieces of paper and spent most of their time staring at glowing rectangles. Perfect prey material, really. Razak materialized his cloaked ship behind Jimmy's food truck with all the dramatic flair you'd expect from a galactic apex predator. Plasma cannons armed, biomask activated, shoulder-mount laser targeting system online. He was ready to announce his presence with the traditional predator war cry that had struck terror into civilizations across the cosmos. What he got instead was Jimmy Martinez, a 40-something guy in a grease-stained apron, looking up from his grill and saying, "Dude, that is one sick costume. You here for the comic convention?" Razak stood there, mandibles clicking in confusion. His universal translator was working perfectly, but somehow the words didn't make sense. This human wasn't cowering, it wasn't screaming, it was complimenting his appearance? Convention, Razak growled through his biomask, the sound designed to paralyze prey with fear. Jimmy nodded approvingly. "Yeah, man, the attention to detail is incredible. Those mandibles actually move. And don't get me started on the height extensions. You must have spent a fortune. Hey, you hungry? First samples on the house for anyone in costume this good." And that's when Jimmy Martinez, completely oblivious to the fact that he was addressing a creature that could literally rip his spine out through his chest cavity, held up a paper boat containing what he called his signature apocalypse wings. "Fair warning, though," Jimmy said, with a grin that would have been charming if it weren't directed at a being capable of destroying small cities. "These bad boys pack some serious heat. We're talking Carolina Reapers, ghost peppers, and a few other ingredients I'm not legally allowed to name. Most people tap out after one bite." Razak stared at the orange-glazed pieces of what appeared to be cooked bird flesh, his heat sensors detecting nothing particularly dangerous. The human was offering him food, not cowering, not fleeing, not even looking particularly impressed by his 7-foot frame of pure predatory perfection. This was not going according to the standard invasion protocol. Now, here's where things get interesting. See, Commander Razak had spent the better part of 30 years building a reputation as the most feared hunter in the galaxy. His ego was roughly the size of a small moon, and his pride was even bigger. So when this soft little human offered him what was clearly some kind of primitive sustenance and suggested that he, an apex predator with advanced bioengineering and centuries of evolutionary superiority, might not be able to handle it? Well, that was just insulting. "You dare suggest that I, Commander Razak of the Predator Council, cannot consume your pathetic human nourishment?" he snarled, his mandibles flaring in what his species considered a display of dominance. Jimmy blinked. Sure, dude, go for it. Just saying, maybe start with the mild sauce first. Work your way up, you know." Razak's internal monologue went something like this. "These humans are even more primitive than the reports suggested. Their biology is laughably weak. Their skin contains no natural armor. They have no claws, no fangs, no venom sacs. They probably subsist on nothing but processed vegetation and the occasional small rodent. Whatever chemical compounds they consider spicy will barely register on my superior predator physiology. This will be an excellent demonstration of my species' dominance before I begin the harvest." What actually happened was this. Razak grabbed the entire container of apocalypse wings and shoved half of one into his mouth with the confidence of someone who had never encountered capsaicin in any form. For exactly 2.3 seconds, everything was fine. Razak even managed a condescending chuckle at the human's obvious concern. His biomask registered the food as simple proteins and organic compounds, nothing his advanced digestive system couldn't handle. Then the Carolina Reapers kicked in. If you've never seen an 8-foot alien warrior discover spicy food for the first time, let me paint you a picture. Imagine a freight train hitting a wall made of pure regret. Now imagine that freight train is on fire, and the wall is also on fire, and everything is on fire, and someone is playing sad violin music in the background. Razak's eyes, all four of them, began streaming what can only be described as tears of pure anguish. His mandibles, designed for intimidating prey, started clicking uncontrollably like a broken typewriter. The biomask, unable to process what was happening to its wearer, began emitting error sounds that sounded suspiciously like a smoke detector having an existential crisis. "What form of chemical warfare is this?" Razak roared, his voice cracking in a way that would have been hilarious if it weren't so pathetic. Jimmy, bless his completely oblivious heart, reached under his counter and pulled out a glass of milk. "Here you go, big guy. Dairy helps with the burn. You want some bread too? Always keep some on hand for first-timers." And that's how the most feared predator in 17 star systems found himself accepting comfort food from the very prey he'd come to hunt, while internally questioning every life choice that had led him to this moment of absolute humiliation. Now, while Razak was busy having his existential crisis and learning that pride tastes significantly worse when mixed with Carolina Reapers, his ship's AI was doing what all good military AIs do when their commander starts screaming about chemical warfare. It panicked. Madre, which stood for Military Assessment and Damage Report, Entity, had been monitoring Razak's vital signs through his biosuit. What she saw was, from her perspective, absolutely terrifying. Heart rate spiking to dangerous levels, stress hormones flooding his system, thermal readings suggesting some kind of inflammatory response, and most concerning of all, Razak's combat assessment had gone from totally confident apex predator to weeping mess begging for dairy product in under 5 seconds. The only logical conclusion? The humans had deployed a biological weapon of mass destruction. "Emergency protocol activated," Madra announced, to absolutely no one since Razak was too busy hyperventilating into a glass of milk to pay attention. "Commander Razak has been compromised by unknown toxin. Alerting High Command. Initiating quarantine procedures. Preparing orbital bombardment. Sequence." Back on the Predator homeworld, Admiral Vexstar was enjoying a nice afternoon of polishing his trophy skulls when his communication console started flashing red and making the kind of noises usually reserved for galactic extinction events. "This better be good, Madre," he growled. "I just got the mandible polish off my fingers." "Admiral, Commander Razak has been neutralized by an unknown human weapon, requesting immediate backup and full scientific analysis team. The humans appear to have developed chemical warfare capabilities beyond our understanding." Admiral Vexstar nearly dropped his prized Venusian skull-crusher cranium. Razak neutralized? That was impossible. Razak had taken down entire civilizations before breakfast. The humans were supposed to be soft, pink, and completely harmless. "Show me the tactical breakdown, Mandre." What followed was the most confusing military briefing in Predator history. According to Madre's analysis, the humans had somehow weaponized their food. They had taken common organic compounds and enhanced them into substances capable of reducing elite Predator warriors to tears within seconds. The delivery system was ingenious in its simplicity. They disguised it as hospitality. "So you're telling me," Admiral Vexstar said slowly, trying to process this information, "that a single human defeated our finest hunter using lunch?" "Affirmative, Admiral. The substance appears to cause immediate physiological distress, compromised motor function, and complete loss of tactical awareness. Commander Razak has been reduced to accepting aid from the enemy. It's the most effective pacification weapon we've ever encountered." Admiral Vexstar stared at the tactical display, showing Razak slumped against a wheeled food dispensary, clutching a glass of some white liquid while a human patted his shoulder sympathetically. This was either the most humiliating military defeat in Predator history, or the humans were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. "Dispatch Dr. Pipsqueak and the entire Xenobiology Research Division," he ordered. "If the humans have developed bioweapons this advanced, we need to understand them before they can be used against the rest of our forces. And, Madre, classify this as Priority Alpha. If word gets out that we lost a commander to human cuisine, we'll be a laughingstock across 17 star systems." Dr. Pipsqueak was having the best day of his career, which, considering he spent most of his time studying the digestive patterns of parasitic space worms, wasn't exactly a high bar to clear. But this was the kind of mission that got you tenure at the Galactic Research Institute. First contact with a species that had somehow weaponized their food? The academic papers alone would make him famous. "Listen up, team," Dr. Pipsqueak announced to his squad of 5 researchers as their stealth ship approached Earth's atmosphere. "We're dealing with an unprecedented biological warfare system. The humans have apparently mastered chemical compounds that can neutralize Predator physiology in seconds. We need samples, data, and most importantly, We need to understand how they've achieved such precise targeting of our neural chemistry." His team nodded solemnly. Dr. Blitzwick, the team's biochemist, was already running calculations on her datapad. "Sir, preliminary scans show the humans consume these compounds regularly. They appear to have developed complete immunity through constant exposure." "Fascinating," Dr. Pipsqueak muttered. "An entire species that's essentially inoculated themselves against their own weapons. No wonder they've survived as long as they have." What the research team discovered when they landed was not the military installation they expected. Instead, they found downtown Phoenix at lunch hour, which, if you've never experienced it, is like watching organized chaos performed by people who have collectively decided that operating vehicles while simultaneously consuming food is a perfectly reasonable life choice. Dr. Pipsqueak's team set up their covert observation post across the street from Jimmy's Inferno, which would have been more covert if they hadn't been 8-foot-tall aliens trying to hide behind a newsstand. Their cloaking technology worked perfectly against predator sensors, but unfortunately made them look like they were covered in Christmas lights to the human visual spectrum. "Sir," whispered Dr. Glubnoid, the team's anthropologist, "the humans appear to be queuing voluntarily for the weapon dispensary." Dr. Pipsqueak focused his enhanced optics on Jimmy's food truck and watched in horror as human after human approached the vehicle, exchanged small pieces of paper for containers of what were obviously chemical weapons, and then proceeded to consume them willingly. Not only consumed them, but appeared to enjoy the experience. "This is impossible," breathed Dr. Skritlax, the team's toxicologist. "My scanners are detecting capsaicin levels that should cause immediate respiratory failure. That female human just ingested enough concentrated alkaloids to kill a Ratharian bull slug, and she's smiling about it. But it got worse. Much worse." At 12:47 local time, a group of human adolescents approached Jimmy's truck and began what could only be described as a competitive consumption event. Dr. Pipsqueak watched through his scope as they took turns ingesting increasingly dangerous levels of the chemical weapons, each trying to show less distress than their companions. The humans called it Ghost Pepper Challenge, which, from a xenobiological perspective, was the most terrifying phrase Dr. Pipsqueak had ever heard. "They're children," Dr. Blitzwick whispered, her voice cracking with what might have been admiration or terror. "Human juveniles are participating in voluntary toxin resistance training. Their entire species is being conditioned for chemical warfare from adolescence." Dr. Pipsqueak made rapid notes on his datapad. The implications were staggering. These weren't just weapons. They were a way of life. The humans had integrated biological warfare so completely into their culture that they considered it recreational. They gathered socially to consume increasingly dangerous compounds. They celebrated those who could withstand the highest concentrations. They had entire establishments devoted to nothing but dispensing these weapons disguised as nourishment. "Sir," Dr. Glubnoid said urgently, "I'm detecting another weapons facility 3 blocks away. The humans have labeled it Thai Paradise. Authentic Bangkok heat. My thermal sensors are registering compound concentrations that should be physically impossible to survive." At 1:15, Dr. Pipsqueak nearly had his own physiological crisis when a human male walked past their hiding spot, casually drinking something called Da Bomb Evolution, straight from the bottle like it was water. The compound readings were off the charts. By all known biological laws, that human should have been reduced to a puddle of regret and poor life choices. Instead, he was checking his phone and humming what appeared to be a mating song. "Team," Dr. Pipsqueak announced, his voice filled with the kind of scientific excitement usually reserved for discovering new forms of life. "We're not just dealing with biological weapons. We're dealing with a species that has essentially evolved beyond the need for normal food. They've replaced nutrition with controlled poisoning, and they're thriving on it. This changes everything we know about evolutionary biology." Dr. Skridlax looked up from her scanner readings, her expression somewhere between awe and existential dread. "Sir, I hate to interrupt, but the human operating the primary weapons facility appears to have noticed us. He's approaching our position." And indeed, Jimmy Martinez was walking across the street toward their newsstand, carrying a small container and wearing the kind of friendly smile that, in any reasonable universe, should not be directed at beings capable of interstellar travel. Now, here's where our story takes a turn from scientific observation to complete intergalactic disaster, because Dr. Pipsqueak, brilliant as he was in the field of xenobiology, had apparently never learned the most important rule of scientific research. Don't let your test subjects know you're studying them. "Hey there," Jimmy called out, apparently unbothered by the fact that he was addressing what looked like a light-up alien boy band hiding behind a newspaper stand. "You guys been standing there for like an hour. You hungry? I got some mild stuff if you're not ready for the serious heat." Dr. Pipsqueak's universal translator worked overtime processing this casual greeting. The human was offering them samples of his chemical weapons. This was either an act of incredible hospitality or a direct threat. Given what they'd observed about human culture, it was probably both. "We are researchers," Dr. Pipsqueak said carefully, his voice modulator making him sound like someone gargling gravel. "We have come to study your food weapons." Jimmy blinked. "Food weapons? Dude, I just make wings and tacos, though I guess some of my stuff could probably strip pain if you needed it to." Dr. Blitzwick nearly dropped her scanner. They weren't just weapons. They were multi-purpose chemical agents capable of industrial applications. The implications were staggering. "We wish to understand," Dr. Pipsqueak continued, his scientific curiosity overriding his survival instincts, "how your species has developed such resistance to these compounds. For research purposes." Now, Jimmy Martinez was many things. An excellent cook, a decent businessman, a man who could handle spice levels that would make Satan himself reach for a glass of milk. What he was not was someone who backed down from a challenge, especially when it came to his culinary creations. "You want to test your tolerance?" Jimmy grinned, and Dr. Pipsqueak would later describe that smile as the expression of a predator who has just spotted particularly interesting prey. "Tell you what, Doc, you and your cosplay friends want to have a little competition? Winner gets bragging rights and a free t-shirt." By this point, a small crowd had begun to gather. Mrs. Rodriguez from the flower shop, Tony from the auto repair place, a group of construction workers on their lunch break, even old Mr. Peterson, who usually complained about everything louder than a whisper, had shuffled over to see what was happening. "What's the challenge?" Dr. Pipsqueak asked, his scientific brain already formulating hypotheses about human competitive behavior around chemical weapons. Jimmy ducked back into his truck and emerged with a series of containers arranged from light yellow to ominous black. "We start with my basic buffalo sauce," he announced to the growing crowd. "Then we work our way up through ghost pepper, Carolina Reaper, and finally," he held up a container that seemed to absorb light around it, "my special reserve. I call it the last thing you'll ever taste. It's a blend of Carolina Reapers, Trinidad Scorpions, Pepper X, and a few other ingredients that I'm pretty sure violate several international treaties." Dr. Skritlax's toxicology scanner immediately started making noises that sounded like a dying R2-D2. "Sir," she whispered urgently, "that final compound is registering at 3.2 million Scoville units. That's approaching weapons-grade capsaicin concentration." The crowd was loving this. Someone had started taking bets. Mrs. Rodriguez was offering to call an ambulance preemptively. The construction workers were chanting something that sounded like "sauce fight, sauce fight, sauce fight." "Rules are simple," Jimmy continued, clearly in his element. "We each take a spoonful, wait 30 seconds, then move to the next level. Last one standing wins. No milk, no bread, no nothing until someone taps out." Dr. Pipsqueak looked at his team. This was it. This was how they would unlock the secrets of human spice resistance, through direct experimentation, through science, through what was probably going to be the most painful experience of his academic career. "We accept your challenge," he announced, and the crowd erupted in cheers that would have been flattering if they hadn't sounded suspiciously like the kind of cheers people make when they're about to watch someone do something spectacularly stupid. The first round was buffalo sauce. Dr. Pipsqueak approached it with scientific precision, measuring exactly 1 milliliter on his sampling spoon. Jimmy, meanwhile, took what could generously be described as a soup ladle's worth and consumed it like it was vanilla pudding. "It's not bad," Jimmy said conversationally. "Got a nice tang to it." Dr. Pipsqueak felt like someone had set his tongue on fire and then decided to add more fire for good measure, but he held strong. This was for science. Round 2 was ghost pepper sauce. Dr. Glubnoid tapped out immediately, claiming his species-enhanced taste receptors made further participation physiologically inadvisable. Dr. Blitzwick lasted approximately 4 seconds before she started making sounds that her universal translator couldn't process. Round 3 was Carolina Reaper territory. Dr. Skritlax, despite being a toxicologist who should have known better, took 1 spoonful and immediately began what could only be described as interpretive dance, expressing the concept of regret. She was escorted to a nearby bench by Mrs. Rodriguez, who seemed to keep emergency ice cream in her flower shop for exactly these situations. That left Dr. Pipsqueak facing down Jimmy Martinez and the final boss, the last thing you'll ever taste. You sure about this, Doc? Jimmy asked, and there was genuine concern in his voice. This stuff is no joke. I've seen grown men cry. I've seen a biker gang admit their feelings. I once had a customer propose to his girlfriend just to have someone to share the medical bills with. Dr. Pipsqueak looked around at the crowd, at his defeated teammates, at the container of what was essentially liquid pain with attitude. His entire career had led to this moment. First contact between species, the advancement of scientific knowledge, the opportunity to understand how humans had weaponized their own nutrition system. For science, he declared, and took the biggest spoonful his dignity could manage. What happened next was, according to the 17 different phone videos that immediately went viral on human social media, the most spectacular display of alien regret ever recorded. Dr. Pipsqueak didn't just cry. He wept in languages that hadn't been invented yet. His cloaking device malfunctioned, cycling him through every color in the visible spectrum plus a few that hurt to look at. His translator started outputting what sounded like a grocery list in ancient Vulcan, but was actually just him screaming "why" in 47 different dialects. Jimmy, meanwhile, finished his spoonful with the casual confidence of someone who had built up an immunity to chemical warfare through years of dedicated practice. "Good batch," he said thoughtfully. "Maybe needs a little more vinegar." The crowd went absolutely wild. Mrs. Rodriguez was taking pictures. The construction workers were singing some kind of victory song. Old Mr. Peterson was laughing so hard he had to sit down. And Dr. Pipsqueak, brilliant scientist, trained xenobiologist, and now the galaxy's foremost expert on why you should never challenge a human to a spice-eating contest, found himself accepting a glass of milk from the very species he'd come to study, while internally composing his resignation letter to the Galactic Research Institute. The emergency session of the Galactic Predator Council was, by all accounts, the most uncomfortable military briefing in the organization's 12,000-year history. Admiral Vextar stood before the assembled council members, trying to explain how their most elite research team had been systematically defeated by a single human operating what appeared to be a mobile chemical weapons laboratory, disguised as a lunch service. The holographic display showed the footage that had somehow made its way from human social media to Predator intelligence networks. There was Dr. Pipsqueak, cycling through every color in the electromagnetic spectrum while making sounds that violated several interspecies communication treaties. There was Commander Razak, still clutching his glass of milk 3 hours after the initial incident, staring into the middle distance like someone who had seen the heat death of the universe and found it wanting. And there, in the center of it all, was Jimmy Martinez, calmly cleaning his grill and asking if anyone wanted seconds. "Let me understand this correctly," said Counselor Rexnar, his voice dripping with the kind of disbelief usually reserved for reports of spontaneous peace treaties. "Our finest warrior and our entire xenobiology research division were neutralized by condiments?" "Not just condiments," Admiral Vextar replied, consulting his datapad with the expression of someone reading his own obituary. According to Dr. Pipsqueak's final report before his nervous breakdown, the humans have developed a comprehensive biological warfare system based on voluntary consumption of increasingly lethal chemical compounds. They begin training in childhood. They hold competitions to determine who can withstand the highest concentrations. They've established entire commercial enterprises devoted to nothing but dispensing these weapons to the general population. Counselor Vrashtok, the eldest member of the council, slowly shook his massive head. "And they do this for entertainment?" Apparently. The crowds seemed to find our team's physiological distress amusing. They recorded it for posterity and shared it across their global communication network. As of this morning, the footage has been viewed 47 million times under the title, "Aliens Try Earth Food Gone Wrong, Gone Spicy." The council chamber fell into the kind of silence usually reserved for funeral services or tax audits. Finally, Counselor Blacksamir spoke up. "What about orbital bombardment? Surely we can just eliminate the threat from space." Admiral Vextar pulled up another display. "We considered it. However, further analysis of human social media reveals they have similar weapons facilities on every continent. They call them restaurants. Conservative estimates suggest there are over 3 million such installations worldwide, many of them mobile. They've essentially weaponized their entire food supply chain." "And they're immune to their own weapons?" asked Counselor Trocanul. "Worse, they've developed tolerance through constant exposure. What neutralized our best warriors is considered mild by human children." Dr. Pipsqueak's final notes suggest that humans regularly consume compounds that should, by all known biological laws, cause immediate organ failure. They call it building character. The implications were staggering. A species that had weaponized nutrition. A civilization that treated chemical warfare as a social activity. A people so terrifyingly adapted to capsaicin-based compounds that they sought out increasingly dangerous concentrations for recreational purposes. Counselor Rexnar was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. We can't invade a planet where the local cuisine can defeat our military forces. It gets worse, Admiral Vextar continued, his voice taking on the tone of someone delivering really bad news. Intelligence reports indicate they have something called Indian restaurants and Szechuan cuisine. Our analysts are afraid to investigate further. And so it was that humanity earned the most unusual distinction in galactic history. They became the first species to achieve protection from alien invasion through the aggressive use of seasoning. The official Predator Council resolution, classified at the highest levels and absolutely never to be shared with other species under penalty of exile, read as follows. Earth is hereby designated as a Class X forbidden zone. All Predator vessels are banned from approaching within 50 light-years of the Sol system. Any warrior found attempting to hunt humans will be court-martialed and sentenced to mandatory dietary counseling. Let the record show that we are not retreating from superior firepower, advanced technology, or numerical superiority. We are retreating from buffalo wings. Back on Earth, Jimmy Martinez was closing up his food truck for the day, completely unaware that he had just saved his entire planet from alien invasion. He swept up the area where the cosplayers had been earlier, shaking his head at the mess they'd left behind. Some people really couldn't handle their spice. Hey Jimmy, called Mrs. Rodriguez from her flower shop. Those costume guys coming back tomorrow? Who knows, Jimmy replied, loading the last of his equipment into the truck. But if they do, I'm introducing them to my habanero breakfast burrito. That'll really give them something to cry about. As Jimmy drove home through the Phoenix sunset, humming to himself and planning tomorrow's menu, somewhere in the depths of space, an entire galactic civilization was adding avoid planets with food trucks to their official military doctrine. And perhaps most remarkably of all, nobody would ever believe them if they tried to explain why. Because at the end of the day, when the history of human-alien relations gets written, this is the story they probably won't tell, that humanity's greatest defense against cosmic conquest wasn't nuclear weapons, wasn't advanced technology, wasn't even our stubborn refusal to go quietly into that good night. It was our inexplicable, irrepressible, absolutely insane love of foods that cause physical pain. And honestly, that's probably the most human thing of all.